Hello and welcome to Blue Ridge Community Church. My name is Jeremy. I'm one of the pastors here at Blue Ridge and excited to be with you guys once again. Hey, I want to let you know that if you are new here to Blue Ridge, I know there's a lot of college students back in town, classes have begun. And so if you're new here and you're checking us out, you're looking at what's going on and you're looking at these tables going, what on earth with these tables? What's going on here? And for those of you that are regulars, just bear with me for a moment because it's always someone's first day here. So what you see here is our attempt as a church to be as obedient as possible to Jesus's command in Matthew 28, where he says, make disciples. And so while there are all sorts of aspects of disciple making, we believe that there are two essential aspects that we can help facilitate here on a Sunday morning. And the two of those are community, that is connection with one another, and learning that moves from just information gathering into actual application in our life. And we believe circles gathered around tables helps facilitate that in this environment better than your more traditional rows. And so we've been experimenting with this throughout the summer. In fact, like we said the last few weeks, actually next week on September the 4th, elders are gonna be up here and we're gonna give an update about where we believe God is asking us to go next, what this is gonna look like going forward, what we've learned, what adjustments we might make along the way as we continue to become the church that God is inviting us to become now and in the future. Now, one of the things I want to say is I know that there are people, there's all sorts of different belief systems as you come into a room this size and you're sitting around with different people. I want to say, for those of you who wouldn't say that you're a follower of Jesus right now, you wouldn't say you're a disciple, a follower, a apprentice of his, and you may not even have that terminology in your vocabulary right now. Here's the deal. I want you to invite you, in fact, this is an invitation to all of us, to be authentic at these tables. Like, we don't want this to be a place where we put on a face of Christianity and just kind of go with the flow. Like, if you're not in that space yet, it's okay to let the people at your table know that I'm not there yet. I'm just checking this thing out. I'm investigating. I'm not even sure I believe all this. All we would ask you to do is do that respectfully. But other than that, we are so excited that you're here because we believe God is up to something in your life and we can't wait to see what he does in and through this in you. And we love to be a part of that in any way that we can. Now, several lessons we've learned through this summer as we've done these tables. One of them is these tables work better if there's at least 4 people. In reality, I would rather have a table packed with 8 people than even just 4 people because I've just seen the dynamic. You can watch the dynamic from the stage and you see the difference between those tables. The other thing would be, and every week there's someone who doesn't listen to me with this and I watch it play out. If you're just here with your family and you're just sitting at your table with your family, I can tell you it's gonna work best if you get with another group of people that's not just made up of your family, okay? Trust me on that as we walk through this. So, as those of you who are regulars know, in a few moments, I'm gonna ask everyone to stand up and you're gonna face away from your table. You're gonna look towards people around you and you're gonna look for those tables where there's just a couple of people. And if you're just sitting at the table where there's just a few people, it's just your family, then I wanna invite you to, hey, you make that step or together collectively decide, hey, we're gonna condense down with this other table over here to make this the best possible experience we have. So we've been saying it this way, it's a little corny, I get that, but it's memorable. Let's put the community back in Blue Ridge Community Church, okay? So everybody stand up, face out. We're all awkward right in this moment, just be okay with that, okay? And go introduce yourself to somebody you don't know. Okay, guys, as you're sorting out, even if you're sitting back down, you go, wait, we didn't condense with anybody. Go ahead, be that awkward one. Go ahead and look around, invite someone over as we see. Make sure that there's not just people sitting alone. We want to include everyone in our journeys as we go throughout this morning. So awesome, love it, guys. Thank you. You're getting so good at this. and I love it. So right now, grab a note card from the center of your table, fold it in half, write your name on one side of that and face it out, because you may have met someone last week and you were too embarrassed to ask their name, and so this will help them remember it. While you're doing that, I'm going to talk to those watching online. For those of you that are joining online, we are glad you're joining us in that way. We want to encourage, if you're watching alone, please pause it right now and pray and just go, God, who do you want me to invite into this? Maybe it's someone at your work, it's another family member, it's a friend, it's a neighbor, it's something like that. These are available all throughout the week on demand. So please, it's better for you to pause it now and come back to it with someone else than it is to just watch us alone, because being a part of the church is not just watching something, but it is about engagement. And we want you to be able to engage with this process. And by the way, if you are watching online, would you drop a comment below? One, what's going well for you at home in this format? And two, how can we make it better for you as you engage through that environment? Awesome. Okay, thanks everyone for gathering in this room and giving me a moment to talk to those online. So we are finishing up a series we've been in all summer today. It's the series called One Another, and really it was born out of this command of Jesus's in John chapter 13. It's the Last Supper, and this is one of his final commands that he gives his disciples before he's arrested. He says this: "A new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another." And as we've seen and as we've stated over and over again, Jesus makes it very clear the way the rest of the world is going to recognize whose we are, who we belong to, that we are whose disciples, whose followers, whose apprentices we are, is by the way that we love one another. And like we've said, it's just as important what's not there. He didn't say they're gonna recognize you by your theology. They're gonna recognize you by the version of the Bible that you read. They're gonna recognize you by the type of church you go to or the type of community you're a part of. He says they're gonna love you, or they're gonna know you and whose you are by the way you love one another. And so, as many of us know, there's about 59 or so, depending on how you count them, one another commands in the New Testament. And we believe each one of these one another commands are practical, tangible ways in which we fulfill this command, loving one another well. And so we've been making our way through that all this summer. And today we're wrapping it up. But Woody, a couple weeks ago, as he stood up here and he taught through Colossians 3, which is what we're gonna wrestle through today, some questions associated with what Woody taught a couple weeks ago and that passage. And we'll give context. If you weren't here, that's fine. You don't need to have been here to be caught up on what we're talking about. We'll walk through some of that. But one of the things that Woody said, his premise for walking through Colossians 3 was this whole idea that we can't just try harder at these one another things, at these one another commands. To live these one another commands out the way Jesus intended isn't about us just putting in more effort. That us living them out the way that Jesus commanded us to live them out and the way he intended us to live these out with one another, these one another commands, comes through an authentic encounter and transformation with Jesus and the good news of the gospel and what he's done through his death, burial, and his resurrection, inviting him to become Lord and leader of our life. We can't just try harder and expect to live these out the way Jesus said. In fact, Jesus says as much, just even in what I just read earlier from John 13. It says, "As I have loved you, I want you to love one another." See, there's this assumption by Jesus that the only way you're gonna be able to love the way he loves if you've experienced that life transformational love from him. And so today, as we finish up this series, what we wanna do is really wrestle with these two tensions. Am I trying to love others by just putting in more effort? Am I trying to live out these one another's by just trying harder? Or is this an overflow of the life-changing encounter with Jesus' love that I've experienced? And here's the deal. I want every one of us to be willing to wrestle through that, because truth never fears examination. Am I just trying harder? Am I just trying to white knuckle it? Or is this God's Spirit in me, transforming and changing me so that I can love people the way he loved me? So before we jump in to our table discussions this morning, would you pray with me? Jesus, I am so grateful for your love for us. I think about this night, and shortly after this, you would go into the garden with some of your closest followers, and you would pray, and you would say, Father, if there's any way that this cup could pass from me, and what you were talking about was your arrest and your crucifixion and everything you would go through. But I think mostly you were talking about the weight of sin that you would carry, that you would take upon yourself. That separation that sin caused you and the Father for the first time in all of eternity, because you became that perfect sacrifice for us there. I thank you for your willingness to go to the cross for us, and that resurrection that happened 3 days later that affirmed you were who you claimed to be. And you were the one and only who had the power to forgive and do for us what we couldn't do for ourselves. And so my prayer today is that we would truly be able to begin this conversation, sort through, have I really experienced that? Not am I religious, not what do I believe, not all those things, but have I really experienced that type of transformational encounter with you? Would your Spirit speak to us this morning? It's in your name we pray. Amen. So, guys, here's where we want to start. We always want to start just kind of getting us talking. We know if this is your first time at tables, even if it's you've done it with us all summer, you know it's new, it's uncomfortable. We get that, okay? I'm there with you, and I understand this as we've walked through this, and so we want to get us talking. And so here's where we want to start. Paul's going to talk about in Colossians 3 when we get there, he's going to talk about clothing. So here's the question I want to ask, real simple one. What is a clothing trend from the past you wore that now embarrasses you? Okay? We've all had these experiences, okay? This clothing. So while you're thinking about this, I'm gonna give you a few minutes to answer this in a moment, but let me share with you one of mine. Now, I'm not sure you could quite call this a clothing trend. I think that's probably why I was able to pick up this specific piece of clothing at a shop like I was able to pick it up at. I was shopping, it's probably the late 2000s, maybe mid 2000s. I was shopping at the local J. Crew outlet, and I came upon this rack of white pants, white jeans. And I looked at him, I thought, you know what? I think I'm a white jean kind of guy. I think I can pull that off. And they're a good price too. So I went and grabbed a couple pair, went in the dressing room, put them on, went, yeah, maybe. Sent a picture to my wife, which she's a natural encourager, so she lied to me and told me they look good. So I purchased them and I walked out of there confident and excited about my new white jeans. And so the next day, I wore them, because you wear new clothing when you get it, right? So I wore them, I put them on, and before leaving the house and coming here to work, I even doubled down on this, and I thought, you know what? These feel like you should cuff them a little higher than normal. And so I cuffed them probably like mid-calf. So now I had on white jean capris. Threw on some flops, because I guess I thought I was in the Caribbean. I don't know. And I strolled confidently into this building. Now, my first meeting of the day, that day, was a creative team. And that time, creative team was made up of primarily guys from pretty much 25 to their early 30s. And I'd known a lot of them for a long time. And I walked into that room, and you would have thought I walked in naked by their response to like their laughter, their pointing at me. I became the butt of the jokes for the entire 2-hour meeting. And I'm telling you, I'm a confident human being, but that was the first and the last time I ever wore those white jeans. What about you? What's something from your past? Maybe we're at the first day of school. Maybe it's the first day of an outfit you bought one time and you walked in thinking it was the coolest thing and you learned very quickly it was not. Maybe it was, you can even think hairstyles. Was a hairstyle you embraced? Maybe it was the jeans, the color, all that kind of stuff. Maybe you've been around for 6, 7 or decades or so. So you see some of these styles come back, they rotate back, and you look at them and you go, oh yeah, I remember. You'll regret that one day just like I did. You know, like what's a clothing trend that you now look back that embarrasses you, that you embrace, that you wore, okay? Take 5 minutes, so just go around, share a little bit. Don't share, obviously, as long as I did. Go around, share, okay? Go for it. I'll let you know when you're about halfway through. There'll be a timer on the screen. Go for it, guys. halfway. Got about 2.5 minutes left. One minute left, 1 minute. Okay, guys, hopefully that got you a little warmed up in talking with one another. So let's jump into Colossians 3 here and look at part of the passage that Woody looked at a couple weeks ago, the week before baptism. He said this, this is what Paul wrote to the church at Colossae. He said this, therefore, as God's chosen and holy people and dearly loved. So here again, I want to point this out. Once again, Paul is making an assumption that the people he is talking to in this moment have experienced God's love. That he's identifying these people as chosen people, as holy people, as dearly loved people. He's talking to the church. He's talking to followers of Jesus. He's not just telling people to do this that don't have God's Spirit inside of them. Not just telling people to try harder. He says, but he comes into this. He says this, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Bear with each other and forgive one another. If any of you has a grievance against someone, forgive as the Lord forgave you. And over all of these virtues, put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity. Now, as Woody read this a couple weeks ago and was walking through it, he started that talk with a black shirt on. And at some point throughout the talk, he is kind of an illustration. He grabbed a white button-up shirt and he put that shirt on. And this whole idea was that, yes, that this isn't about trying harder, but if I'm a follower of Jesus, if I'm a disciple of his, if I'm an apprentice of his, if I've got him inside of me, if he's become the Lord and the forgiver of my life, then that means that there's been this internal change and transformation that has happened. But also with that internal change, there needs to be an outward expression of that. And that we need to be clothing ourselves that would reflect the truth of who Christ is inside of us outwardly. And so here's the question I have next as we go through this. From the list below, these are all things that were found in Colossians chapter 3 there in the verses I read. From the list below, what is something you need to put on? Or something you want to see more of in your life? I mean, I think we can all look at this no matter where we are and look at compassion, humility, patience, love, kindness, gentleness, and forgiveness and think those are all really good virtues, right? Those are good things. So which one of these is something you're going, you know what, where I'm at right now, I need to put this on, or I wanna see more of this in my life. For me, it's gentleness. See, I'm good at being gentle if you don't know me that well, okay? If you come up, I can be really gentle for short spurts, okay? Like that's in it. But it's with those that I'm closest to. It's with those that I've been working the longest with. It's with those that I'm in meetings with the most. It's with my family, where that lack of gentleness starts to ease up to the surface, where that filter starts to go away. In fact, I was reminded of this. So my wife, I've got a wife and two daughters, and last night, one of my daughters, she had a little just allergic reaction to something. And I knew I had to be up early in the morning, so she was in and out of our room and woke me up several times throughout. And even actually, as I moved to the couch downstairs, she came downstairs thinking her mom had moved to the couch downstairs, and so came down there and woke me up at 12:45 again. And you can just imagine how wonderful I might be knowing I have to be up super early in the morning when being constantly woke up throughout the night. But the reality is when I look at this list, I know that this is something, gentleness is what I want to clothe more of myself in. What about you? What do you want to see more of in your life? Okay, I'm gonna give you another 5 minutes for this. Go ahead and give some examples as to why you want to see this, more of this, and what the effect is. Be as specific as you can as you go through this. And some of you that didn't get to go maybe the first time, go first, or if you went last, okay? You got 5 minutes, go for it, guys. We're halfway. Make sure you're answering the question why you want to see this. 1 minute left, 1 minute. Okay. So, as Paul was writing this letter to followers of Jesus, again, we keep on coming to these spots. You see it over and over again throughout the book. There is this assumption that there should be change. If a person has authentically encountered Jesus, they should be transformed. In fact, if we scoot back a little further in Colossians chapter 3, he's like surrounding this sentence are all these lists of the way the world operates. And it says this, you, speaking to his audience, used to walk in these ways in the life you once lived. See, he's operating from this premise that the life we lived before Christ, who we were over here, is transformed and changed after Christ, that this change happens because of Christ inside of us. So, here's the next question I want to ask you, and you can answer it from one of two perspectives. So, since you began following Jesus, since you became a follower, a disciple of his, what has changed in your life? Like, who did you used to be? Like, what's been transformed and changed? Maybe it's something like real big and obvious. Maybe it was alcoholism. Maybe it was drug use. Maybe it was your words. Maybe it's entertainment. Maybe your marriage, relationships that were on the rocks. Or maybe you're no longer with a person. You're in a dating relationship that you knew was unhealthy, came to Christ, and he moved you in a different direction. Maybe it's your view of family. Maybe you realized how unhealthy the family of origin you lived in was, and you started to break free from some of those cycles that have been there for generations. What has changed? There should be change. If we have authentically encountered Jesus, there should be change. Or, now this is recognizing that not everybody in this room is a follower of Jesus. Since beginning to investigate who Jesus is, what has changed in your life? And these would be more things like possibly like your view of God. You had a hard time thinking about a creator, but now you're open to that. Maybe it's your view of Jesus. You believed in a historical Jesus, but now he might just be who he claims to be. Maybe it's your view of the Bible and what you thought of it beforehand. You thought of it as a bunch of just fairy tales, but now you're going, there might be more here. See, we believe that God begins to change us as we're moving towards him too, and begins to reveal things and change us along the way. So from either one of those perspectives, since you began following Jesus or since beginning to investigate, what's changed, okay? And again, give examples, be specific. Walk you through it. you're gonna have double the time you've had for any of these other ones. In fact, this is the longest one you're gonna have for this morning. So I'm gonna give you 10 minutes, so take your time. Answer this thoughtfully. What has changed? Be open, and you can be honest. Go, you know what? I would put myself in that first category, but I struggle with coming up with something. That's okay. We wanna be authentic and real about where we are. You got 10 minutes, okay? Go for it, guys. halfway, 5 minutes left. One minute left. So, here's the deal. As we look at where Paul went in Colossians 3, and really you look at most of the New Testament letters, or all the New Testament letters, they're written to churches, groups of people, followers of Jesus. And there is this story that's being told of how people come to faith, are being transformed by God, and what they're supposed to look like and how they're supposed to operate. And it's why Paul spends so many, if you've ever looked at Paul's letters, like the one that Woody looked at in Colossians, you see this thing. He starts usually the first half of his letters with just talking about, this is what Christ has done for you. This is who, because of Christ, because of what he did on the cross, this is what he pulled you out of. This is who you used to be. And now you get the opportunity, usually the second half of his letters is now you get the opportunity to live differently. Now you get the opportunity to let the outside reflect the inside reality. But all of this comes back to that encounter with Jesus that a person has where they step outside of the kingdom into an authentic relationship with him. It's all based out of that. So with that in mind, here's what I want to do. And we're doing this a little differently than what we've done pretty much any question up to this point that we've done this summer. We're only asking a couple of you to share at each table. And this previous question may have started you to dive into this a little bit, but we want you to go a little bit further. So just a couple of you at your table, okay? Because it's gonna be 8 minutes. You're gonna have about 4 minutes each. What's your story? We want a couple people at each table. Some of you are very comfortable with sharing your story of who you were. Here's the format we love. Who you were or what your family was like before you met Christ. Go back, give us this is who you used to be. This is what your family dynamic was. This is what you grew up in, all those kinds of things. 2, how did you actually come to Christ? What was that moment? Where did you say, hey, yes, Jesus, I want you to be the Lord and the leader of your life? What were the events that were surrounding that? What was God doing at that time in your life to make you aware of who he is? And then what has changed as a result? Now, here's the deal. I want to talk to those of you guys who have big, fantastic stories. These things they come to mind immediately. And I know there are those out there, and they're the ones that usually make it up onto stages and things like that for people to hear these big transformational change stories and things like that. But here's the deal. Every single one of us has a story of what God is doing and drawing us. My wife, for example, she grew up in a home. She wouldn't have the big, fantastic story that would make it up on a stage for a baptism celebration or something like that. Her story is one of growing up in a family that loved Jesus. 2 parents who loved each other. They were high school prom king and queens or something like that. Leave it to Beaver, homecoming queen, king, something like that. Leave it to Beaver type stuff. Kind of got married and loved Jesus and served him. And that's the home that she was born into. So my wife remembers giving her life to Christ at a very, very young age, grade school type of age. So she doesn't have she's who was I before? I don't know. I was barely out of diapers kind of thing, that kind of thing. But she does remember. She remembers that season of her life. She knows what the type of family she grew up in. That's all a part of her story. And then what has changed, as a person on the outside, I look at my wife's life, and the thing is, I see a consistency through the years. Year after year, through teenage years, it's not that she did everything perfect or she didn't have that little bit of high school or middle school stuff inside of her and, exploring and figuring out. But overall, you see this consistent, lifelong transformation and continuing and desires to want to serve Jesus. She had dips, but not this moment. She didn't have these moments of walking away. She had doubts. She had those things that we all walk through, but a desire to want to serve Jesus, to love people well. The way I've watched her through her 20s, because I've known her since she was 19 or 18, through her 20s, want to serve people, see people step into a relationship with Jesus, serve women, the amount of people that she's invested into throughout the years, her desire, that consistent trajectory is that change in her life. So, a couple of you, you're gonna have 8 minutes, a couple at your table, share your story. It may be one of those big, grand, gigantic, like this is who I was and it was all this ugly stuff and now Christ did this and now it's over here. And it may just be a story of, man, it's been consistent. It's been this. It's been awesome. And this is what God has done in me along the way. But be specific. Who were you before? What was your family like? How did you come to Christ? Like, what are the events surrounding that? And what has changed as a result? And you'll probably only have time for about 2 of you to share at every table, okay? Go for it, guys. Someone be brave and go first. Halfway. That's 2 minutes. I'm actually only gonna give you 1 minute left, and then we're gonna wrap up here. Okay, I'm gonna call time here, so we have enough time for our final question. Would you grab the card in front of you with your name on it? And I wanna just take a moment and answer this final question. Why did God want you here today? Why did he want you here today? It could be because he wanted you outside of your comfort zone, and this is your first experience with tables. It could have been an act of obedience. It could have been someone's story at the table. It could have been what we talked about one of these things that you looking at, that you need to clothe yourself in. It could be to examine really this question, am I just trying harder? Or is this really loving other people the way Christ loved me? Is that really flowing out of an encounter with him? Take a moment, like 30 seconds here, write down in a few short words, one sentence or two, why did God have you here today? I'm gonna give you just a couple minutes here to go around, because you've written it down, so it should be fairly succinct, to go around and just share with your table. This is why he had me here today. Take a couple minutes, I'll let you know here. Take about 3 minutes here, and we will wrap up with prayer. Go for it, guys. Take like 1 minute more to make it around your table. Okay, guys. Would you guys kind of close your eyes? Actually, don't close your eyes. Just look down at what you wrote down yourself on that piece of paper. This is why God had you here. Whatever you wrote on there. The question is, what are we gonna do with that? How are we gonna respond? If we truly believe God had us here for whatever we wrote down there, what's my response supposed to be? That's what I wanna pray for. That it wouldn't stop here at conversations at a table, but that what we've written down there, if we believe the God of the universe had us here for a specific purpose, how are we gonna respond? Jesus, I wanna pray. There's probably 400 people in this room, 350 people in this room, somewhere around there. 350 unique answers to that question. And God, I do believe there is not a person in here that's here on accident. That you are moving either them towards you or on a journey with you as we journey this out as followers of you. God, it's so easy to just check the box. I pray that we would look at what we believe you've spoken to us, and we would go out of here and we would respond. We would clothe ourselves in things like humility and compassion and forgiveness and love and all of these other things, bearing with one another and gentleness, all these things. We would go out of here not white knuckling it, but as a response to what you've done in us. God, I pray that some of us would sit in the discomfort of that space where, why don't we see the change that Paul was assuming as he wrote this letter would happen? Why don't we see that change? Even though we believe the right things, why isn't there that both internal and external change? God, I pray that we would go out of here sharing our stories of what you've done in and through us. And that as a result, we would have an impact on the people around us as they hear what you have done through your grace expressed in our life. Jesus, thank you for this opportunity to be with you. Thank you for these one another's that allow us to love each other the way you first loved us. It's in your name we pray. Amen. Guys, love having you guys here. Love you guys. Go out and love each other well.